The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Newsfeed Business. U.S. President Donald Trump has pulled the threat of sweeping tariffs on Colombia after reaching a deal on the return of deported migrants. In the space of several hours that rattled global markets, the White House claimed victory late on Sunday, saying Colombia had agreed to all of President Trump's terms without delay, including the acceptance of deportees on U.S. military aircraft. Colombian President Gustavo Petro had earlier refused to allow 2 military planes carrying deported migrants to land, objecting on the use of shackles and handcuffs on detainees. Bogota says both countries overcame the diplomatic impasse, adding that the president's airplane will be ready to bring back those Colombians who were planned to be deported back to the country Sunday.
Colombia's government informs it has gotten over its impasse with the government of the United States. In this context, Colombian Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo and Ambassador Daniel Garcia Pena will travel in the coming days to Washington, D.C. to have high-level meetings that follow up on the agreements resulting from the joint work that led to the exchange of diplomatic notes between the two governments. Colombia's government, under the direction of President Gustavo Petro, has made ready to facilitate the return of Colombians who were going to arrive in the country this morning on deportation flights. It ratifies it will keep diplomatic channels of discussion to guarantee their rights, our national interests, and the dignity of our citizens.
An analyst says U.S. President Trump is sending a clear signal to Latin American countries, especially Mexico, that failure to cooperate with U.S. migrant deportations will result in retaliatory measures. George Mason University professor Guadalupe Correa Cabrera said deportations have usually been performed in a similar manner, with undocumented migrants treated as criminals, but said that the current tensions were about Trump asserting his strength as his new administration takes office and the ideological differences between leftist Trump and Colombian President Gustavo Petro. Bloomberg reports Colombia is the third largest U.S. trading partner in Latin America and the U.S.'s fourth biggest source of overseas oil, topping Brazil. Other major exports include gold, coffee, and flowers, a good that typically sees brisk trade around Valentine's Day.
Colombia is not the main trading partner, the most important trading partner with the United States. However, because of the asymmetries between the two economies, of course, the United States can impose for a short term tariffs on the imports from Colombia, and this is going to be devastating for the country. So it's an instrument to pressure this nation in any single form. And this is also a sign to other countries, particularly a sign to Mexico, because there are more things that the United States were going to negotiate with Mexico, particularly in immigration.
Trump has not taken similar action against Mexico, the largest U.S. trading partner, but has said he was thinking about imposing 25% duties on imports from Canada and Mexico on February 1st to force further action against illegal immigrants and fentanyl flowing into the U.S. The Mexican peso depreciated in international trade after U.S. President Trump announced he would impose tariffs on Colombia, reviving concerns about his trade policy. The currency, one of the most liquid currencies globally, was trading at 20.46 units per dollar, down 1% compared to the London Stock Exchange Group reference price on Friday. The U.S. dollar was up 0.3% Monday, while gold prices dipped 0.6% to around $2,755 per ounce. Investors are focused on the Federal Reserve's January 28 to 29 meeting. Fed policymakers are expected to keep rates steady, but the larger story unfolding will be how the central bank confronts early moves by Trump. Oil prices fell more than 1% on Monday after U.S. President Trump called on OPEC to reduce prices. This follows the announcement of wide-ranging measures to boost U.S. oil and gas output in his first week in office. Mean of Platts Singapore lower by 2%, while Brent crude and West Texas Intermediate are down by over 1% to the $77 per barrel level, their first decline in 5 weeks last week as concerns eased about sanctions on Russia disrupting supplies. OPEC and its allies, including Russia, has yet to react to Trump's call, with OPEC Plus delegates pointing to a plan already in place to start raising oil output starting in April. Over in South Korea, impeached President Yoon charged with insurrection over his short-lived imposition of martial law. This makes him the first sitting president in South Korea's history to be indicted. Seoul's Corruption Investigation Office named Yoon as the ringleader of an insurrection. He attempted to impose martial law in early December, a move that plunged the country into political turmoil. South Korea's Kospi Index rose over 0.8% to 2536, while the Korean won notched up 0.5% so far to 1,437 to the U.S. dollar. The president of the World Economic Forum urged political and business leaders to work together, despite their differences, to meet critical priorities at the closing session of this year's WEF held in Davos. After 5 days of meetings and panel sessions, the war in Ukraine, the Middle East crisis, AI, and the climate crisis have been discussed. And looming large over the meeting have been the first days of U.S. President Donald Trump's presidency.
I think we all realize during this week that we came together in Davos at a time of immense consequence and uncertainty. Political, geopolitical, and macroeconomic landscape all are shifting under our feet. At the very moment, the clock is quickly ticking down to meet critical political priorities. Driving economic growth, reducing carbon emissions, finding ways to end conflict, all cannot wait. And the only way to progress on these issues is by working together. But our cooperative approaches may need to adapt to a new, more uncertain era. There is a new political reality that we are faced with. We will need to be innovative and creative and work with each other, even if we don't see eye to eye on everything. Our week in Davos showed that this is possible. Leaders from around the world, from the public and private sectors, with different views, gather to show how we can collaborate.
On the lighter side, cellist Yo-Yo Ma gave an outdoor performance dedicated to glaciers as political and business leaders near the end of talks at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. The performance in the Swiss ski resort town Davos was part of the Performing Hope climate change initiative from Arctic Base Camp. The world-famous cellist performed 3 pieces in cold and snowy conditions on a mountain just above Davos. By performing hope, the organizers behind the initiative believe the emotional energy needed facing the challenges of a climate crisis can be generated.
Davos is, of course, where the World Economic Forum has its annual meeting, and it's also a spectacular landscape. But to have our event outside in the magnificence of nature is to remind people that regardless of what they're discussing in those closed doors, this is really what's happening.
I've been asked to perform hope. What is that? Well, I was also asked to perform for the glaciers and for the mountains.
And that's a wrap of our coverage of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Business and economy news from around the country in a moment. Newsfeed Business will be back. Stay with us on BNC. Welcome back. A senator is calling for the suspension of private motor vehicle inspection. Our correspondent Agatha Gregorio just filed this report.
That's right, Raine. It may get easier to have one's car registered as Senator Raffy Tulfo is asking for the suspension of private motor vehicle inspection. According to Tulfo, smaller cars rarely get involved in road crashes as private car owners take good care of their vehicles, knowing they will be the ones riding. The lawmaker says buses are not as well maintained, and so it is important to focus on them as well as trucks. The suggestion was made after Transportation Undersecretary Jesus Ferdinand Ortega said they are forming a department order so certain types of vehicles will undergo complete motor vehicle inspection before registration and not just emission testing. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Agatha Gregorio. Now, Honda Philippines will recall more than 6,000 vehicles sold in the country amid fuel leaks and steering concerns. The recall affects the 2024 CR-V model, the 2022 to 2024 Civic 4D models, and 280 units of the Civic Type R model. If any leak are detected or the fuel pumps will be replaced, the company will repair the steering gearboxes free of charge. Honda has confirmed there have been no reports of accidents or crashes linked to these issues. Some good news for motorists on the last week of January. We can expect a rollback after 3 straight weeks of fuel price hikes. Industry sources say gasoline prices may go down to 1 peso a liter, or rather go down 1 peso a liter starting tomorrow, January 28th. Diesel may have price cuts of as much as 55 centavos a liter and 50 centavos for kerosene. The Energy Department says the opening of oil refineries and ports in the U.S. Gulf Coast are the factors behind the impending price cuts. The Philippines may escape the middle income trap by the year 2050. Research from Nomura shows it may take another 2 decades for the Philippines to be freed from the lower middle income category if the economy continued to grow by 6% every year. Manila has been in the lower middle income bracket since 1987. Based on the World Bank's latest income classification data, Nomura recommended that the country undertake structural reforms to drive investment growth. An official is optimistic the Philippines will not be a target in U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff hikes. Philippine Ambassador to the World Trade Organization Manuel Antonio Tehanqui tells Bilyonaryo News Channel's Business 360 he doesn't foresee any risk the Philippines would be affected by the move due to its strong relationship with the United States.
Of course, some neighbors in our region may be subject to supply chain disruptions, so we must be ready and nimble to take advantage or provide alternative supply. We must be always prepared and use the ASEAN community as a very important regional supply chain and expand also our investments.
The Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DNR, is partnering with other countries to address the plastic waste issue in the Philippines. This came as the country accumulated over 22 million metric tons of waste last year, of which 12 to 14% are plastic waste. DNR Undersecretary Jonas Leones tells Bilyonaryo News Channel's Weather HQ that among the countries that helps the Philippines to address plastic waste are Canada and the United Kingdom through the UN Development Program.
So the government is now partnering with the private sectors to help us address plastic waste rate in the Philippines. You're right when you said that as of now, we are generating 61 million tons of plastic every day, and out of which 163 million sachets are generated every day. So with the initiatives coming from the private sector and the government efforts, we hope to address the plastics. No? We are following yung two major laws that we are strictly implementing, the Republic Act 9003 and the Extended Producer Responsibility. And we are also partnering with the international organizations like UNDP.
The Action Partnership will include a baseline assessment of the plastic situation in the country and financing roadmap and incentives. Philippine foreign borrowings declined last year. Data from the Bangko Sentral shows it went down by 5.6% to $13.68 billion. The figure is $810 million lower than the $14.49 billion recorded in 2023. The BSP explains this is due to lower project loans and programs that mitigate the increase in global bond issuance. The Department of Agriculture, or DA, allocates 3 billion pesos to build 99 cold storage facilities across the country. The DA explains the move aims to extend the shelf life of agricultural products and trim farm losses. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel Jr. said the 1.5 billion peso allocation came from its budget for this year under the General Appropriations Act, while the other half came from the 2024 unprogrammed funds approved by President Bongbong Marcos. The construction of large storage facilities is expected to take 18 to 22 months once contracts are awarded. This comes as analysts expect Philippine farm output to have likely contracted last year due to weather-related events such as El Niño and La Niña. Philippine shares closing this week's first trading day in negative territory as traders await the outcome of the U.S. Federal Reserve's first policy meeting for 2025. The PSE index was down by more than 1% to close at 61.96, finishing the day as the worst performer in Asia. All of the sectoral indices ended in the red, with industrials falling the most at 2%. Decliners also outpaced advancers, 118 to 68. Total value turnover stood at 5.4 billion pesos. Majority of the day's most active stocks also ended in the red, with China Bank falling the most at almost 7%. Also on Monday, the peso is currently trading at 58.42, weaker than Friday's close of 58.31, ahead of the outcome of the Fed's policy meeting. And that's a wrap of today's Newsfeed Business. Thank you so much for making us your daily source of financial insights. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News channel. Follow the Money's next at 4:30. See you then.